Our lives didn't change in a way that a lot of people's lives did because we were already homeschooling. So a lot of families had that big shakeup of, the kids are home, and we didn't have that change. And then his job didn't change.
I was talking to Jared about how things were going, and he was like, I realized this is probably how you have felt for the last 2 years in grieving, after my husband died. And I had actually just been thinking about that. So I wish I could tell you it was so bizarre and weird, but it really wasn't. Some things like the girls, we can't go to the children's museum or the zoo and preschool and just things like that. But as far as just feeling a little distant from people, that's something I had been experiencing already.
The big thing just physically is I'm working from home now. Kids are all e-learning. So part of my work is community with my colleagues. So certainly missing a lot of just relationships.
A lot of the changes in life for me, and probably you as well, is centered around the fact that we got married in the second month of this, starting our relationship off with God at the center, and getting to know what it's like to have our own family unit or our own relationship as a priority, converting from our dating life to our married life.
Well, from a family perspective, we got a lot of time with Josephine in some very critical months, I think. So while we were both working from home and the daycare was closed and then they reopened, but we kept her home because we were both home, and in that time we got to see her start crawling and start laughing and things like that, and things that we would have probably missed if she'd been at daycare. So from a parenting perspective, I've really appreciated getting specifically these months with her. I know all months are great and all months have milestones, but having this specific time with her as a new parent, I really appreciated. And then our obvious big one is finding out we're having another baby. So being home, thank you. So being home for the big first chunk of that made it very easy to hide from work.
Yeah, so as far as kind of the good things about this whole time, this is the big one. This is Miss Sophie Joy. 2.5 months old.
I just had her. She was born on Cinco de Mayo, so she is a little Cinco de Mayo baby. She was born only 5 pounds, 14 ounces. Her name is Royal Quintanilla Gabrizier. And currently right now she'll be 4 months on the 5th. And so this is my little baby doll. She's so cute. Right now she weighs 12 pounds. She's really easygoing and very, very sweet. The best thing about, I guess, coronavirus when it comes to her is the fact that I've been able to actually spend quality time every single day with her, and we bonded so well together.
Some of the good things are that the art center is adapted, and so I was able to do, especially with the camp, we were able to do Zoom sessions with camp kids, and that was really nice because it kept me teaching, and we also got to do more substantive projects that were about everything going on in the world today.
It's been really a good experience for us to just have that time closer with each other, and our son Aiden has been home from college, and just us getting to have him back in the house and everything has been a really good experience because we really like having him around, and he's decided to go to school in town this year instead of going back to Anderson for school, and I think everyone in our house is happy about that, him and us and his brothers and sisters, just because we like being together, and that makes my heart happy to know that it's a joy for us to have him back around, and for him too.
May to the end of July, I was on maternity leave, and it was just so nice. I got to enjoy my garden again. I got to pick my tomatoes, just little things like that. I got to hear the birds singing. It was just so really scaling everything back to what are the simplest joys, and where is God bringing us joy even in the midst of all the crazy stuff in the world.
We both have just felt joy in like the simple things more so. So we planted a garden right next to our house on 13th Street, and just like watching it grow and like having fresh veggies from our garden has like brought me so much like unexpected joy. And just like simple things like going for walks together and talking and just kind of processing our day.
I mean, we've been able to get outside more, and that's the biggest thing for us is we've been able to do a ton of family walks together.
Just like getting to know our neighborhood really, and talking to neighbors we've never talked with before, and we now have like good friendships with neighbors like across the creek behind our house.
Another thing that I've noticed is this renewed sense that home is important, that the people who live with you and where like the environment you live in really matter. So I think we see that in like the fact that Lowe's and Home Depot and Ace Hardware have been packed out, and the fact that plants are selling out, you know, and it's hard to find lumber. Some of these things are chain of supply issues, but I think it's also pointing to the fact that people who've been forced to stay home for weeks on end are starting to look around and be like, well, maybe this matters. And that's something that I think we've been passionate about for a while, that home matters. Hospitality in your home matters, and I think COVID amplified that.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is just not being able to do stuff for them outside of the house. Like, we're not going places, and I know a lot of people are trying to make that work. My mom lives with us and she's high risk, so we're just not even messing around with trying to do that. So
my dad is actually in a nursing home now and is on hospice, and as a result, he only can have one visitor a week, and no children can visit. So, like, Liam hasn't seen him since March. He's never met Sophie being on hospice. I don't know if he'll ever get to meet her because we don't know kind of the time course of things.
So the roughest time was...
Well, that's about 5 weeks.
Yeah, because just before 4th of July, I fell down the stairs and really badly hurt my toe. And so... and also all during that time, Josephine has kind of been in and out, being really sick. And so, and then on top of that, then at the beginning of August, I got my surgery, and then that put me back out again because then I had to rest for a week recovering for surgery. Plus, she was sick again during that week. And then again, last week, I got really bad strep throat and was couch bound again, and also had to go to the hospital for that.
It's been very fun.
Yeah, and so it's been really hard, but Stevie's done a really good job of taking care of both of us when I've been couch ridden either from strep or surgery or initially breaking the toe. So taking care of both me and her at the same time.
Just not being able to see family like we normally do. We normally would see our family maybe once every 2 months or maybe even once a month. And now we've only seen our family, my parents, only once during COVID, and I believe Julie's family twice. But it's not what we are used to.
Haven't seen my family hardly at all. They live out of town, and so I've only seen them once since Christmas, and I'm used to being able to see them every 6 weeks or so, and so it's just those kinds of things have been difficult.
I think one of the more substantial changes is like how frequently we've been able or not been able to visit family.
With family, it's been a lot of balancing wanting to love family by seeing them, but love them by like not seeing them and keeping them safe, because there's a lot of underlying health conditions and stuff. So I think that's been kind of exhausting, trying to like figure out how to go about that in a way that's honoring to them.
Well, it's kind of hard to see our friends.
Hey, turn it. I don't like wearing my mask. I miss going to Grammy's house.
I know I miss people from our school community a lot. I feel like I've got my head down and I'm in like coronavirus mode, and I'm doing like, what I do now during the coronavirus. And then when I get a glimpse of my regular life, like I'm on a Zoom meeting with people from school, then that kind of cracks my resolve, and I like feel tears starting to come up because I miss the people from school, and I just want to climb through the computer and reach out and touch them or hug them or whatever, because I haven't seen them in so long.
As far as like losses, things that I feel like
did you spit?
no, that have been lost is probably, I mean, for everybody, it's obviously a sense of freedom. So losing being able to like see people, to be able to be there, obviously for your dad in the home. Hey, not being able to be as physically active as we normally want to be.
I've seen God moving specifically just in my own heart. I guess taking on a different role in our family where I go from working part-time to all of a sudden like I am the sole provider for a family of 4. My mind was shifting anyways, but then just having like, so that responsibility falls on your shoulders, and there's this global pandemic going on, so like things are super weird and strange. It's really forced me to be aware of how much God provides, and it's really not on my shoulders, even though I constantly want to like take it back and put it on my shoulders, but it really isn't. And being okay with productivity being like way lower than I think, like I like to measure my worth by like, how much did I get done today? How many things did I cross off on my list? And God being like, you're stuck at home with your kids, you're trying to get stuff done. Maybe just like a total of 3 hours of work is enough, and it's fine. And just being, getting up each day and saying like, what do you want me to do today? What do you have for me?
There are a lot of different elements of my identity, and my work is one of those. So even just in some of the seasons over the last few months, being a little bit less busy at work, because quite frankly, when I'm meeting with a client, a good amount of our meeting is relational, which when you're having a Zoom call, you have a little bit less of that. So a normal meeting now is maybe half of the time that a meeting used to be. So I have more time, less busy, which sounds good, but then having more time on my hands can be challenging too. So that I feel like I'm still being productive, but it's just a different level or a different kind of productivity.
Over the past 5 months, I've seen God work so well because when I gave birth to her, it was very difficult. When I gave birth, my sugar spiked for the first time before I went into surgery. When I went to surgery, after I gave birth to her, she was born with water on the, fluid on the lungs. Not only that, I was bleeding out at the same time. It was like really, really bad. So the surgery took even longer. And I was laying there and I was thinking like, I hope I don't die right here, And I knew that God was working. They told me that I couldn't have any more children. It's not safe, but I'm happy that I was able to have a healthy baby girl. So like, I'm looking at the positive, not the negative, because I'm able to be here and actually raise her. So I think God was really with me in that room. Sarah has been there for me through the whole entire step. Every single step that I've taken, she's been there holding my hand, like literally. She was in the room with me when I gave birth to her. She was with me when I gave birth to her, literally holding my hand. Even through recovery room, she was right there holding my hand, So she's been like literally God's helper, I guess you could say, because she's been through every single step that I've been going through. And whenever things get hard, she's always there for me.
At my job, I moved into this new role where I have to support multiple people at work. We went through a few furloughs on our team, and then we had to, cut a few people's hours. So that was something that was very hard on our whole team and on an individual basis for every single person. So, I felt that it was hard for me to keep positive through hard times like those. But I realize that I'm the one who I'm supporting them, so I need to keep that positive attitude, and more than anything, just give them hope and let them express what they feel. Listen to them, and obviously what they feel, I feel. So this opportunity of just being able to be with them and just hearing their heart and not really worry about work has been a blessing for me. And with conversations I've had with coworkers, they've said that they're like, thank you for giving me a different perspective during this time. And yeah, it's something that I'm very grateful that I'm able to provide, and it's hard, but it's something that I find joy.
Something that was spurred on by George Floyd's death was that we're doing like a book club thing with my parents and brother and his girlfriend, and a few other family members came to a couple groups, and we're reading a book about race. And I think it's been challenging because it's not like a topic that we all talked about really growing up, but I think it's been really hard but beneficial to like have that conversation as a family and just ask questions and hear about how, just like the perspectives of different family members and have that open dialogue.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. And just like for extra context, they're like Sarah's brother's Guatemalan, and I'm Puerto Rican, and so, and everyone else in Sarah's family is white, so. So yeah, it's been nice, at least for me. I've told Sarah, I don't know if I've vocalized it to Daniel, but it's really nice, like, not being the only brown guy in those like conversations. And also nice that, like, I don't know, like, you marry into a white family and they actually like at least want to do something like that. It's been nice as a person of color, but then even like apart from all of that stuff, like individually, like confronting the anti-blackness that like my family, like even being people of color, kind of demonstrate, even the ways that like people of color also don't come alongside the Black community, and if anything, enable the oppression of that community. So there's, it's a bit of a weird thing to be like, at sometimes the victim of things, but also at the same time the oppressor.
Yeah, so I mean that's like in light of like George Floyd, like as I've come to terms with like how like the way I perceive the gospel through whiteness, even though like I'm a person of color, I think that's like as a result of that and like me kind of trying to unpack that has created some tension with Sarah, who's probably going through a similar, has to, maybe because I'm here and I maybe force it, like unpack some of the things that are maybe more attributed to like Americana or like whiteness than like God himself.
And I'm very conflict averse, very much so, but Joe reminds me or talks about how it's helpful, like I think of that verse in Proverbs, like iron sharpens iron. It's like growing you, it's making you more like Christ.
I would say that a lot of our one-on-one times have been productive. Chelsea's been meeting with like Robin and still doing that and going for walks, and I've been meeting with Alex Messer and hanging out with him, and we've been planning small get-together, small trips.
Well, I'm starting a one-on-one discipleship with someone from the church, and I'm hoping that will really help in this, just moving forward in this time to get into better habits and add that connection with her in as a routine.
I think my time with God has gotten more consistent since getting married, because we have a time built into the evening before we go to bed where we do talk together and go through a scripture-based devotional.
And I think like a lot of the stuff that's been happening with some of the racial issues that have been discussed and the things that are happening with all the social unrest. One of the things I've really tried to focus on is just seeking to understand people first. Seeking to understand first, and then after I think I understand where they're coming from, expressing my view.
Even though I feel like I've had a little bit more time, discipline has been really hard for me. Just building a consistent routine with like spiritual disciplines and exercising regularly. It's like we'll go, spurts. Like 1 week we'll jog around the neighborhood a few times a week, and the next like nothing.
For me, I think like a lot of it's sort of in my mind, just like a loss of a sense of normalcy. And I think like I struggle with control, and I feel like I've been sort of feeling like I'm not in control and realizing that I have to give up some control to feel at peace.
So I'm really hopeful for this upcoming school year. I'm like really excited to teach again, even though it's going to be all online, because I like this whole summer I've just had so many online trainings, which have been great, but it's like I'm just ready to take all of that I've learned and teach and serve and just to have a change of pace. And I think it's going to be really good, and I'm excited to meet my students again. I know it's going to be challenging in a lot of ways, but I'm really hopeful and excited. So
I am hopeful that things are going to change for the better, and that we're going to see how much we need each other in person, and how much we need to take care of each other, because it just takes one thing and all of a sudden, everything falls apart. So we hopefully we become more aware of our fragility and how we need to adapt.
I think a lot of the good things that have come from this, like just families spending time with each other, spending more time at home, sort of realizing what's important. I guess I'm hopeful that that stuff sticks. I'm hopeful that some of those lessons are like a long-term effect type thing, and it's not like we just go back to the way we were before all of this. I'm hopeful that some of the things that we've learned will persist in the long run.
Being around the neighborhood definitely gives me hope, because with COVID you're stuck here, so we're spending a lot more time here, and so it's really nice to be able to talk to our neighbors when they're out on the porch.
One thing I am hopeful for is that people realize just how precious like the simple things in life are. Like there's so much you don't need, right? You don't need restaurants. You don't need, to see like go to the theater or something like that. Technically you don't need it, right, to live. You can survive without those things. But can you come sit in my lap?
Yeah.
But they also enrich life. So you realize just how precious those things are and what a luxury they are.
There are some good things, again, like the slowing down and, things like I get so caught up sometimes in like, oh, I got to send this email and I got to like check in with this person and do that. And God's like, but do you need to do it right now? And God's like, can't you just play hide and seek with your daughters for 10 minutes? And that's just been, like times like that. Maybe they won't remember it, but it's invaluable, like those memories for me.
I think that from the beginning of everything, I think you see comparisons to other depressions and pandemics and things that have happened in history. But I think from the beginning of this, people there's been a very obvious outpouring of people who want help. People who want to be there for other people. I mean, through work, we were packing food boxes through work to be donated all over the country. And I had people calling me and being like, I'm not working right now. I need to help people. Or I am working, but I have these hours and like I have resources that people don't have. Like, what can I do? And you get a lot of people who are, the second this all kind of hit, you got a lot of people who immediately went to, what can I do for other people? And that, I think, is pretty special. And that makes me feel like we're not all, like, this isn't the apocalypse. It makes me feel better about things, that you have a good population of the world who wants to help each other in these moments.
This isn't a unique thought. I got this from Jared. Full disclosure. But at the beginning of the pandemic, I think Jared had shared kind of his perspective on it, and I think he was holding all things in tension, which I think is good. But one thing he was sharing, that now with some time time has passed, I think that was pretty a good thing that he shared, and a good instinct. Yeah, it was that, like, this time will, like, force people to stop, right? And that, like, when these moments of, like, people, like, you're just, like, interrupted, right? Those are really good moments of, like, clarification and like, growth. And so he was really optimistic about that. I was maybe less so at the time, but looking back, I still feel and sense that we're still in a season of interruption, and then that's been a good thing for us, I think, in our marriage, kind of like what we've been sharing. But I think, and hope, right? And part of your question, like, I hope that an interruption was what we needed.
And I hope some of the generosity that we've seen, been around, doesn't go away. I've just had my heart moved so many times when I would see things that people have done for others, and, like, I just want to be a part of a community like that. I want that to stay. I've been very moved by being a part of the financial team and just seeing how our church has really stepped up to deliver food and care to the community.
I kind of mentioned this at the beginning, like, I've enjoyed some time has freed up, and that forced me or allowed me to, like, do weekly calls with my friends and things like that. So I hope some of this season will just, like, have people slow down some and reevaluate, like, priorities in life and what their time is going to. Like, I think we even talk about that in terms of work and stuff like that. Like, what could a better structure be? And I think I would love, and it's hard in the middle of a pandemic because we can't, like, have people over for dinner and stuff like that, but I would love for then that opening of time to lead to more community, or, like, just being in relation with people. So I hope that that can happen in the long run whenever we're allowed to be together with people again. Yeah.
Something that I am hopeful about, just with all the racial issues that have come up over the summer and that sort of thing, is that there are people who have not cared so much about those issues that are starting to care about them, and they're things that have mattered to me my entire life, and so I'm excited to see other people starting to want to understand what it's like to be someone who's not like them, or want to learn more now about what our country's history is, or what it's like to be in someone else's shoes, and to maybe start to open their ears more and to open their mouths less. And so that makes me hopeful that people could start to care about these issues more. So that's something I feel excited about. I hope there's a long trajectory for that, and not just a short blip on the radar, where people all of a sudden forget that that's something important to think about. But anyway, that's what I'm hopeful for right now.
Yeah, I think maybe similarly, I hope that there are things that we don't go back to, and I hope that there are things that we keep from this time. I can literally count on one hand the number of times when I've asked somebody how they're doing. I've heard very, very few times "I'm busy" since March. Prior to March, anytime you asked somebody, "How's it going?" the answer was busy, and then there was some description of what the busyness was.
finishing up our fostering paperwork, and we're gonna have home visits pretty soon. So yeah, if you can pray for us so that we could, welcome, a little girl, a little boy into our house through this difficult time.
I mean, I think going off of the conflict or tension between us that I mentioned earlier, I could use prayer to not like sink into this hole of seeing Joe as the enemy and we're like against each other in this conflict, but instead seeing it as like a positive thing or as like something from the Lord that he's growing us in. I so quickly fall into that, and then the conflict just like looms there for days, or the like tension in my own heart, and I don't even like see what the Lord's bringing out of it because I'm just so frozen.
I think for me, prayer for me as I like explore the ways in which I feel like I've misunderstood God by having come to the Lord and continue to interact with the Lord in like mostly white spaces. Prayer just for like that kind of journey, and like in hopes that like the God that I would know and the relationship that we would have would be like rich and true and not like based on like ideals that he actually doesn't hold or doesn't hold as tightly potentially. I think for us as a couple, like I mentioned earlier, like I think we're both hopefully growing in like self-awareness of like the privilege that we sit and show up in, and like prayer that we would like recognize that and use that for the benefit of other people and as like a means to be like Christ for people.
Definitely praying for the back half of this pregnancy.
Yeah, praying for our baby.
Yeah.
And praying for our other baby.
Praying that her immune system builds up at some point.
Definitely prayers for our neighbors.
Absolutely.
I know our neighbors on that side, they've been able to get back to work and their kids just started going back to school, but I know they've definitely had some trouble during the pandemic, and that's the family where the father unfortunately got deported by ICE in an ICE raid a few months ago.
It's been a minute, yeah.
Yeah, still prayers for the family, or for the neighborhood and our neighbors.
Well, when it comes to my surgery, that's my biggest prayer. Like, I just want to they're putting me under. I don't want to be put under because with the last surgery, when I had her, I was bleeding out, and I'm just a little bit afraid of that. So all I want to be prayed for is that I just wake up afterwards. That's what I really, really want. It's scary. It really is.
Certainly pray for our health, for my health, having to be present in hospitals, different hospitals a couple months at a time. Health for my family, that I'm not spreading anything to them, and vice versa, that I'm not spreading anything to my patients. And then I think just praying for kind of patience now that we have 2 kids and we're still not able to use as many outlets for getting energy out for at least one of them. Just continued patience and grace for Liam, for ourselves as parents and as partners, especially because we don't get like date nights or like trips away.
I think for me, just as it relates to school for the kids, and that I can be sensitive to what their needs are, not just their academic needs, but from a mental health standpoint, being sensitive to what's going on kind of under the surface.
And I've also had a lot of family issues going on, and ironically during this time I've actually felt that I'm strong enough to sort of move in a different direction with some approaches to problems that have been in existence for a really long time. It's kind of ironic to me because it's been a tough time, but I also feel the strongest that's enabled me to sort of draw some boundaries and say some things that I've been wanting to say for a long time. So I guess just pray for me and that I can continue to move in that direction.
I guess I would just say, in addition to mental health, just spiritual health, that we wouldn't get so focused on, you know, what's happening day to day, that we wouldn't put it in perspective and fail to remember that there's spiritual issues that need to be attended to as well, and that we wouldn't remember to try to connect with God on a daily basis.
And pray for us as we try to help our friends who are now homeschooling, not necessarily because they feel passionate about it or necessarily called to it, but because they feel it's the safest choice for their kids. And so wisdom for us and how to guide them, and like he said, patience as people have questions for us, as we're also trying to homeschool our own kids at the same time.